morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to continue our look at the complete history of the Pokemon trading card game. We have made it to Plasma Storm, and Plasma Storm is an extremely important set, because as the name might suggest, it brought us into the era of Plasma Pokemon. This was a pretty big set. Now, it released in Japan on September the 14th, 2012. It would follow just a little bit later on February the 6th, 2013 in the US, Europe, etc. And the big change we need to start off here was the introduction of Team Plasma cards. And they looked different. They had a different design. They had a different border. If we go and compare one of the Durant to the Durant from Noble Victories, the one that we all hate, at least I do, we can see there that the card design, even though they are both black and white era cards, there is a different design, different border, etc., due to the fact that they are Team Plasma cards. And if we have a look at all of the full art Pokemon, they actually all had the logo in the background. Now, there weren't a million of them in this particular set, but we can look at, for instance, Lugia and Articuno EX, and the full arts, and this was something that would go through all the Plasma Pokemon. The full arts had that Plasma logo chilling around there somewhere, which was kind of cool. And we had some weird things. We had 2 Plasma Garbodor, both bad. 2 Plasma Durant, both bad. And 2 Plasma Watchog, both bad. Boo! But there were some trainers. We had item cards like Hypnotoxic Laser. Yes, we'll come back to that. Supporter cards like Colress. Stadium cards like Plasma Frigate. We really did have a full gamut of Plasma cards. It wasn't just Pokemon. It was everything. We even had Plasma Energy, and Plasma Energy was interesting. Plasma Energy is a kind of energy where newer players, and some of you might be having this exact reaction now, will look at this and go, it is literally a special energy card that provides 1 colorless energy. What's the point? And the point is, yes, on its own, Plasma Energy was absolute trash garbage. But it interacted with other Team Plasma cards in a pretty fantastic way. We'll see a bunch of examples when we get there. Now, if you want the Plasma deck, it was TDK. Tornadus, Deoxys, Kyurem. We weren't there yet. We didn't have those cards in this set. The next set was what would really start seeing everybody play Plasma decks. Plasma saw a bit of play in Plasma Storm, but Plasma wasn't big. But it was Plasma Freeze, the following set, which we'll get to in a week or so. That was when Plasma really started taking over the format. Now, in terms of the pre-release promo card, it had to be a Team Plasma card, and it was. It was Crobat, which looks like a great card on the face of it. Every turn you get to draw a card. Stage 2, never really saw any play. Very sad indeed. But never mind. Oh yeah, and this set for me goes into pretty awesome territory. I might be wrong, there might be another, but for now it's at least the only one I can think of. A set that gave us both a Mamoswine and a Donphan. We do not see that in many sets at all. So this makes Wossie very happy indeed. The Donphan was legitimately a great top tier card. We'll get there in a little bit. The Mamoswine was not, but Mamoswine never is. One set giving us Mamoswine and Donphan. Yeah, I'm in, ladies and gentlemen. I'm in. Speaking of pairs of cards, we also got Black Kyurem EX and White Kyurem EX. And this is weird, because I told you in the previous video that we got Black and White Kyurem EX. They're back here. The difference is, although White Kyurem EX is still bad, 2 of them still bad, this Black Kyurem EX was good. Like real, in a world's winning deck good. It was phenomenal. Worth pointing out that those Ace-Pack trainer cards like Crystal Wall that we saw in the previous video, Crystal Wall just worked on Black Kyurem EX. This was Black Kyurem EX, so it totally worked. It was pretty cool. Now, moving on to look at the EXs, things were a little bit weird, because although we had 8 EXs in the set proper, only 4 of them actually had full arts. So if we take a little bit of a look at those, we had Victini EX with its full art. And Victini was a great card we're going to look at more in a little bit. Articuno had itself a full art. Wasn't particularly great, if I'm honest with you. Did have an attack which did 80 damage, but if it had Plasma Energy Paralysis, which was kind of cool. Cobalion EX was another one that saw a fair amount of play here and there, and we did like it. And Lugia EX, well, it took more prizes when it took a KO. We all know that is good, and that Lugia has become a card which is pretty popular, because Lugia is popular, the artwork's awesome, and it is a playable card still in Expanded, although Plasma has really fallen out of favour in Expanded. But you can still have some fun with Lugia. But then we had 4 other EXs, which actually, although they were in the set, they didn't end up getting full art versions of them. Like Black Kyurem and White Kyurem. Again, White Kyurem was trash, Black Kyurem was awesome. And the reason is, over in Japan, they had the White Kyurem and Black Kyurem EX Battle Strength decks. And the Black Kyurem one also came with Zapdos, so those 2 EXs got brought into our set, but they weren't from a Japanese set that had full arts, so we didn't get full arts. The Zapdos, for what it's worth, was a moderately playable card. Saw a little bit of play here and there, could get immunity on a coin flip, which was cool. And if there's any Plasma Energy, you do an extra 40 damage. Again, Plasma Energy coming up trumps. And the White Kyurem EX Battle Strength deck had White Kyurem and Moltres. And for what it's worth, Moltres, again, if there's Plasma Energy attached to it, you do extra damage. So this was kind of cool. And that's why those 4 didn't have full arts, because they came from these extra decks over in Japan. Now, we did have a bunch of secret rares in the set, like we tend to do. We had ourselves Random Receiver, which was a nice playable card. Let you get your next supporter, which was quite nice. We saw secret rare Blastoise. Now, this is a secret rare. It's Blastoise who's popular, and it is the really good Deluge Blastoise that lets you attach as much water energy as you like. Oh yeah, and then Charizard. And Charizard wasn't a terribly playable card, it wasn't particularly good, but it's a secret rare Charizard. And this is the kind of Charizard that people are now waking up to the fact that this is a very rare Charizard, and nowadays, right, in 2021, everyone is hunting for these rare Charizards to try and make a quick buck. But back in 2013, people were not to anywhere near the same degree. So this Charizard just was not being hunted down. Obviously, people wanted it, but not like it is nowadays, and now people are realizing that this Charizard is worth a lot. I should mention there was also 1 full art supporter in the set. It was Colress. And speaking of the Charizard, if we look at the most expensive card, obviously it's Charizard. This really shouldn't surprise you even a little bit. Generally speaking, you'll be lucky to pick up a copy of this for $300. It is a very expensive card. A few years ago, you could have got this for under a ton easy. A ton is 100. But unfortunately, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, sorry. Now, moving over to have a little bit of a look at the theme decks, we've got Plasma Claw and we've got Plasma Shadow. Obviously, they are going to be Plasma-themed decks because, come on, it's the Team Plasma set, or the first of 3. Obviously, this was going to be the thing. Now, Plasma Claw was a Druddigon theme deck, which revolved around fire, water, and dragon-type Pokemon. You did get a Team Plasma coin, which was extremely cool. You know by now I like these thematic coins. And you got yourself a holo and a non-holo of Druddigon, as was the case at the time. This was an exclusive holo. It was a non-holo in the set proper. And then we got non-holo versions of Jellicent, Sharpedo, and Infernape. And the Infernape wasn't exclusive. It was a holo only in the set. Moving over to Plasma Shadow, we had Giratina, which for what it's worth is a way better card. Same Plasma coin. And you had holo and non-holo Giratina. The holo being exclusive. Again, that's what they tended to do. And we had non-holo versions of Watchog, Garbodor, and Wheezing, with the Wheezing being exclusive to the deck. It was a holo in the set proper. These were very much Team Plasma decks. That was the entire point of them. And fun to note that each of them came with one copy of Hypnotoxic Laser, which was a card that everybody wanted. So it was really cool in that regard. And while we're here, let's move on to the best cards in the set and start with Hypnotoxic Laser. The combination of Hypnotoxic Laser and Virbank City Gym just defined the format. We're not talking good cards, we are talking game-changingly great cards. You see, Hypnotoxic Laser automatically poisoned as an item card, and on a coin flip, put your opponent's Pokemon to sleep. Now, okay, fine, you had to flip heads on this, and then your opponent had to flip tails on sleep in order to stop them attacking next turn. It was only 1 in 4 turns it would work, but on those turns, it was huge. But you had the automatic poison, and you combine it with Virbank City Gym, which said that poison Pokemon take 2 more damage counters. The 2 more is important, because if an attack put more than 1 on between turns, this would add to it. So it didn't just go up to 3 and stop, it kept building. But the thing is, you could go first, play Hypnotoxic Laser and Virbank City Gym, and your opponent would take 30 damage before they even got to their turn. And I've been telling you for a little while here that electric decks at the time were pretty big. And one of the Tynamo that people liked to play had 30 HP. And to put it bluntly, you could not play 30 HP Pokemon when this came around. I mean, you could, obviously you could, but it was an immensely silly thing to do. It's just not something you could justify at all. You had to go for the 40 HP Tynamo. Why would you have gone for the 30 HP Tynamo anyway? Free retreat. Simple as that. The 30 HP Tynamo had free retreat, and that was actually huge because it meant you could just pivot in and out of the active nice and quickly. But essentially, and it wasn't the only 30 HP Pokemon, this is just an example, but the fact of the matter was that any 30 HP Pokemon just became far too fragile. You just couldn't do it. This would be at the heart of so many decks moving forward. Pretty much any deck that could find room would play this combination because it was extra damage through item cards, which we very rarely see. Now, Lugia EX was another incredible card that saw a huge amount of play because, well, it had an ability that let you take a prize every time, extra prize, every time you took a KO. Now, the attack wasn't great, 4 energy, 120, but you could build up. Also, you had to discard a plasma energy from Lugia, otherwise the attack did nothing, and again, you only took extra prizes when you took a KO with Lugia. This is one of those ones, it really needed Deoxys EX here. Deoxys EX made a huge difference because Deoxys EX meant your Team Plasma Pokemon did extra damage. So we really were waiting for that to really make the most of it. But make no mistake about it, this was a great card, and it wasn't just in Plasma decks. It actually saw a bunch of play all over the place, but it was a phenomenal card that did see just a whole bunch of play. We also saw a lot of love for Victini, and a lot of the reason was because of Victory Piece. You see, Victini was cool. 1 energy, search your deck for 2 basic and attach them to your bench Pokemon in any way you like. Or 3 energy, 50 damage, but against a Pokemon EX, you did 100 damage. But Victory Piece was, and again, we're talking Ace spec here, and you can only have 1 of any type in your deck, but it meant that you could attack for free with Victini. You could always use your attacks for nothing. So you could, turn 1, just attach this, hit 100 damage. And a couple sets down the line, we would get the Virizion Genesect deck, which revolved around Virizion EX and Genesect EX, both of which had, well, less than 200 HP and a weakness to fire. Yep. This was just a redonkulous counter to Verizon and Genesect, and that is one of the reasons that led to its popularity, incidentally. It really was just that gosh darned good. Now, Klinklang was a really fun one here, because Klinklang basically said that all of your Pokemon, all your metal Pokemon, could not be damaged by Pokemon EX. And remember, we already had the amazing Klinklang from before that let you move your metal energy around the field, and this was an absolute no-brainer. And Klinklang was good. We've talked about Klinklang in previous videos. It was good before this, but essentially now you could play a whole bunch of metal Pokemon. You could move your energy around. Remember, you move your energy off your damaged Pokemon, play Max Potion, move the energy back, and you've healed for free with no downside. But also, it meant that you could mix around attackers. And you had your immunity to EXs as well. It was awesome. Black Kyurem EX was an amazing card. It just slotted into Blastoise Keldeo decks. You see, Blastoise let you attach as much water energy during your turn as you like. And Black Kyurem, for 2 water, 1 lightning, 1 colorless energy, did 200 and discarded free energy. But the thing is, it was basically lightning free water, so you attach your lightning for the turn, and then you just deluge free water energy on, and then you're hitting 200. And you'll notice I keep showing you Pokemon EX here. They don't have over 200 HP. So basically this meant that you could, outside of very rare exceptions, one-hit KO anything. Keldeo was a phenomenal attacker. And in the 3 months between Boundaries Cross coming out and this coming out, Blastoise Keldeo was absolutely a thing. Black Kyurem just took it to the next level. Now, Donphan deserves to be on this list of best cards, and this is not even a homer pick, it is just that good. For 1 fighting energy, you did 40 damage and switched it with one of your bench Pokemon. It was a hit and run Pokemon. But it was an exceptionally good hit and run Pokemon, because we wouldn't have it yet, but a little way down the line, we would end up getting strong energy, which meant you could do an extra 20 damage, which was good. We didn't have it yet, but also it actually was in the same set of Furious Fists. We would get Fighting Stadium, which did more damage to Pokemon EXs that were everywhere at the time. And we didn't have it yet, but we would get Muscle Band, which let you do an extra 20 damage. And by the time you started playing around with Muscle Band and Fighting Stadium and Strong Energy, this actually built up really quickly into a phenomenal hit and run Pokemon. It wasn't ready when Plasma Storm came out, but over time this Donphan would become a legitimate amazing card. Now, Magnezone was a fun one. It just has an ability that lets you play 2 supporter cards. And it's awkward because it's a stage 2, but you get to play 2 supporter cards. It actually became quite popular in Expanded quite a bit after it came out, but just that ability alone was pretty good. Now, Trubbish was another excellent card that would not quite be ready yet. Trubbish had the lovely ability Tool Drop, and as a fun, weird little side note, there were actually 3 Trubbish in the set. And Tool Drop for 2 energy did 20 damage for each Pokemon tool attached to all Pokemon in play, yours and your opponent's. Now again, it wasn't ready yet. We really did need the Sigilyph that had Toolbox. That one came around in Plasma Blast, couple sets later, that let you have 4 tool cards attached to it. So you could essentially just pile tools on this. And we also needed the Masquerain, which again would come out in that same set. And that let you move your tools around as much as you liked. You could pick it up and then put it down somewhere else. But that was a card we would have our eye on for the future. Cobalion EX was one that was instantly a great card. What Cobalion did was, for a single energy, you did 30 damage and discarded a special energy. And at the time, special energy was pretty gosh darn big. Also, free energy 100 damage goes through any effects on the defending Pokemon. Anything that was blocking you, you would run through. And this again would just fit beautifully into a Klinklang deck bearing in mind you would then have immunity from EXs. And Snorlax, another Pokemon I love, a bit of a homer pick, but a good one, was a great card. It had an ability that stopped your opponent's active Pokemon retreating, which was really good. But for 5 energy, you did 30 damage for each Team Plasma Pokemon you have in play. Which sounds like a lot, but there were ways to get the energy on. And if you had just all Team Plasma Pokemon, then you would all of a sudden be hitting 180 damage, which is enough to KO basically any EX on a single prize Pokemon. Yeah, it was expensive and it generally had to be played with something else because of the expense, but oh my word, it was fun. Now, Giratina deserves a mention here. Giratina wasn't amazing, but it was the best option for Plasma Pokemon at the time. Snorlax was good, but Snorlax was very expensive. And free energy, 50 damage, but it's 100 if the defending Pokemon is affected by a special condition. And obviously you play it with Hypnotoxic Laser for the poison, and then you'd be hitting like 110. That was good. Bearing in mind it's also a Psychic Pokemon, so it hit weakness on Mewtwo. And as a fun little side note, was weak to darkness, so Mewtwo couldn't just double colorless get a return KO. They had to work a little bit harder. And there were some players that saw a little bit of success with Giratina. It wasn't amazing. Like I say, Plasmadex really took off in the following set, but it was kind of fun. Zapdos EX, I mentioned briefly earlier, was an interesting one. 2 energy, 30 damage, flip a coin if head you're immune next turn. It was decent for buying time, and it saw a bit of play here and there, but it was never amazing. Rotom was a fun little tech. For 2 energy, your opponent reveals their hand, and you do 20 damage for each trainer card in your opponent's hand. Really good as a nice little cheeky tech in item lock decks, or just if your opponent ever builds up a gigantic hand. And Lunatone was an interesting one because it's actually had a really good ability that looks kind of meh. Once during your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put them on top of your deck in any order. So essentially, you could rearrange the top 2 cards of your deck if you wanted to. But there are always cards, and we'll see one in a moment, that depend on what is on top of your deck. And for cards like that, Lunatone actually became really, really good. Moving over into trainer cards, there were a bunch of good trainer cards in the set. Bicycle was an item card that let you draw until you had 4 cards in your hand. Item draw is huge. Colress was a supporter card that let you shuffle your hand into your deck and draw cards equal to both players' bench Pokemon. With full benches, that is a shuffle draw 10. Shuffle draw 10 is absurd. And obviously, you'd fill your bench up, and your opponent could not fill their bench. But again, if your opponent's not filling their bench so you draw fewer cards, that seems like a win for you. Colress Machine is an item card that searches your deck for a plasma energy and attaches it to a plasma Pokemon. So again, things like Snorlax and Lugia that look a bit expensive, you could theoretically hit 4 Colress Machine straight away and really get rolling. It's another reason why plasma energy was good, despite being a terrible card on the face of it. Escape Rope came around for the first time in this set, and Escape Rope was an interesting one because it's just a reprint of Warp Point. Makes both players switch their active. And it's a great card that sees a whole bunch of play. It's recently got a reprint, sees a whole bunch of play now. But I just find it very interesting that and they've done this before, it's not the first time they've ever done it, but they took Warp Point and just reprinted it with a new name. It remained a great card and saw a huge amount of play. Eviolite reduced damage done to basic Pokemon by 20 damage, but bearing in mind, this was the era of EXs that were all basic, so Eviolite was great. And Ether let you look at the top card of your deck. If it's a basic energy, attach it to one of your Pokemon. This is one of those cards I was talking about with Lunatone. Lunatone means you know if you're going to hit Ether or not. And Ether was, again, it's item-based energy acceleration, and it's very awkward because you're only looking at the top card of your deck. But with Lunatone, it was actually genuinely worth playing. Plasma Frigate saw weirdly little play. It was a stadium card that remove the weakness of Team Plasma Pokemon with Plasma Energy attached. And it just rarely saw play. Great in theory, but whether we couldn't get the Plasma Energy or whether we had other stadiums to play, people just didn't love it. Team Plasma Grunt let you discard a Plasma card from your hand and draw 4 cards. It wasn't great, but it saw a little bit of play here and there. And then there were 2 A-specs we haven't mentioned yet. Dowsing Machine was the second best A-spec after Computer Search. Computer Search was your go-to. That's discard 2 cards from your hand, search for any card. If you didn't know what A-spec to play, Computer Search is the one. The other one is Dowsing Machine. You still discard 2 cards from your hand, but you put a trainer card from your discard pile to your hand. And even in Expanded nowadays, the general rule is you pick between them. You either go Computer Search or Dowsing Machine. Theory is, if you need to get set up quickly, Computer Search. If you need to reuse stuff, Dowsing Machine. And then Scramble Switch. Scramble Switch was amazing. You switched your active Pokemon with one of your bench, but you moved as much energy from the old active to the new active as you like. And this was all down to testing. If you tested and hit this in a couple of games, you'd play it. And if you didn't, you wouldn't. It actually was a very inconsistent card, but every so often it would hit and you'd land a gigantic play, and it was amazing. But it was a fringe card because you would often play tournaments, you'd hit it like once, and it just didn't give you as much as Computer Search did. Now, moving over into top decks, there are a few we need to mention. Victini Terrakion. We mentioned Terrakion EX previously. Terrakion has an attack that accelerates energy, but you need free energy on to get rolling. In comes Victini. Plus, it also gives you extra type coverage and a good 0 energy attacker, so Terrakion Victini worked quite nicely. Like so many of these decks, you would play Garbodor so that you could block abilities, because you really were a very straightforward deck. You just smashed with these 2 Pokemon. And also, it was a kind of a deck where Drifblim would be quite good. I've said at the time Special Energy was big and would only become bigger with Team Plasma Pokemon, as we'll see next time. So having a Drifblim that could punish your opponent for playing Special Energy was kind of cool. A deck that I was particularly fond of was Landorus Cobalion. You had the Landorus we looked at last week, 30 to the active, 30 to the bench, though it had a bigger attack as well, and this was a really nice counter to Darkrai, so people wanted to play it. You then had the Cobalion we've just looked at, which was a really nice counter to Plasma decks because you get rid of all their energy, because they were a very Special Energy heavy deck. And you'd also play it with the other Cobalion, the single prize Cobalion, which did a bit of damage but stopped your opponent attacking next turn. Or punished them for attaching lots of energy. It did both of those things at the same time. Well, you had to pick between them, but you know what I mean. And that was a really good deck. It was a phenomenal deck against Darkrai and Plasma. And I played it at Nationals in 2013, and I'm not exaggerating, about 70% of the entire field was Darkrai and Plasma decks. And in 7 rounds I played 0 Darkrai decks and 0 Plasma decks. Essentially what I did was I built a counter deck to the 2 top decks. Had I played them, I would have had a good run, but I was taking a huge chance. It didn't pay off, and I went like 3-4 or something. It was a pretty bad day. Having said that, you could also play it with Garbodor to give you an answer to stuff like Blastoise, and Kai Coulston did that and ended up making top 16, so maybe I could be blamed for not playing Garbodor. Now, Klinklang I've mentioned really did just take a step up here. You had the Klinklang that moved energy and the Klinklang that gave you immunity. You had Max Potion for healing. You had Prism Energy, which was a basic energy as a special one. It could be any kind of energy, so it could be moved around as long as you attached it to a basic Pokemon. And your attackers, you were talking things like Cobalion, like Registeel, because you wanted to have metal Pokemon. They're the ones that had the immunity. But then you would also play stuff like Darkrai and Keldeo, because Keldeo could jump into active, and then you would move Prism Energy over using Klinklang, and then Darkrai would give it free retreat, and that was kind of awesome. But bearing in mind you were playing for Prism Energy, so you could attack with Darkrai if you wanted to. It was a cool deck. And the other one I think that really came around here was Snorlax Lugia Plasma, and this was again a deck I played a bunch of. The theory really simply was you had Snorlax for big attacks and Lugia to take extra prizes. You would use Hypnotoxic Laser Burbank City Gym to do extra damage. Obviously with Lugia it's really important that the poison doesn't kill them between turns. You must get the KO using Lugia. And you were really reliant on double colourless energy, and you were really reliant on Colress Machine. It could go wrong. These were very energy hungry Pokemon, but they hit really hard and it was really fun. So it was one I had a lot of fun with. Although again, really we needed Thundurus to make this even better, because Thundurus could accelerate energy in the early game. Although you could play it without. It would just be, well, it'd be a bit nerve-wracking, so to speak. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That was Plasma Storm. Plasma Storm was big. It brought us Plasma Pokemon, and it brought us some really, really good cards. Obviously, Hypnotoxic Laser being the biggest among them, but the list of best cards I went through here was a lot bigger than it was, say, in Boundaries Crossed. This was a very impactful set. And Plasma Freeze is coming up next, and that one had a huge impact as well. But for now, I want to hear from you guys. I want to know your memories of the set if you played back then, and I want to know your thoughts about the set, seeing it now. If you didn't, go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing is always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.